Welcome to the InGeneral podcast, episode 88. Before we jump in, check out the links in the description. We have a new partnership with Frome. Every frame a painting, I think is their slogan. But check it out. Discount code Jurassic Outpost. You can get Jurassic Park, every frame of that movie condensed into a lovely, colourful image. And check out the Jurassic Outpost store for retro merch, Kirby merch, masks, and a whole lot of other stuff. Links in the description, as I said. But today I'm joined with Ryan and Stephen Bray Morris. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Hello. Stephen, we've had you on before a couple of times.
Yes, it's been a couple moons now. It feels like every time we get closer to a new movie release, everyone kind of comes together from different podcasts, different video content creators in the community. Just like in general, it's sort of it almost feels like there's a jovial like vibe in the air of like, oh my gosh, we're getting another news break this week.
Right.
Like it's I talked to Brad at at the Jurassic Park podcast, and it was just like it feels like almost like a sleepover. We're like, up late drinking Mountain Dew, playing video games, and talking about Jurassic Park.
Man, that was good. It was nice to hear Brad off his own podcast as well. Slightly different, more.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Thank you.
But you're right. Yeah, it's got that excitement is back. There's a new Jurassic coming, and everything that's coming out about it. It's despite what you think about the movies, you can't help be excited.
Oh,
right.
It's funny. I think that there's not two types of people or whatever, but like that kind of vibe of, are you dreading something because you want it to be perfect, or are you excited because, like, for me in some ways with this franchise, because it started off so sort of not confident in its in my mind, not confident in its origins. I feel like with every leak, or not even just leaks, but with every official news for Dominion, I'm like, really? Like, we're going to mention Sorna? Like, really? We're going to bring Dotson back? Like, I never believed, like, this feels like Marvel Story Group level kind of excitement from the creator's side of things.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
I totally get what you mean. I think for me, I was super excited for Jurassic World, like insanely excited, because that was the Jurassic Park 4 that I'd been waiting 14 years for. I'd run a website, I'd done all this, been so pumped for it. And then the run up to Fallen Kingdom was a little bit more, I really hope they pull it off this time. For me, that was my personal view. And then I think after Fallen Kingdom, we kind of all just went silent a little bit. And, it wasn't heading in the direction that I wanted it to go in. I was a little bit let down with that movie. But for some reason now, I think it's the mixture of having the original cast back, having maybe Camp Cretaceous as well has done that, this excitement of something else that expands upon what we're seeing. While it's still not exactly where I want the franchise to go, I'm pumped for Dominion. I'm getting that excitement back, and I think it's just seeing all the leaks again and seeing the set, the filming that's going on in Malta. It's kind of getting me hyped.
Well, yeah. It's as somebody who really likes Fallen Kingdom, but my rankings from
Fallen Kingdom, right?
I do. I think it's just because the romantic nature of the movie. That's the thing. It's like it almost, and it's that thing of like, I rewatched it recently right after watching Jurassic World, and I almost didn't realize how tonally different the film is from Jurassic World. Sure. It's like a whole different, it's a whole different acting style almost for the characters. It is definitely more jarring rewatching them together. And I guess is that one of the, because I'm always, again, it's like I want to know why people don't like the movies that I do like, because it's so interesting to hear people's perspectives. Like, what were those like things about Fallen? Was it mostly just the acting and the script for you, Jack?
Yeah, I think that just the general direction that it went, but I think acting wise, I have to admit, like, I'm not the biggest fan of, well, actually no, I really dislike the character of Claire. As much as I love Bryce Dallas Howard, I was so excited when she was cast, and for some reason I can't get on board with Claire. I don't like her. I also don't really like Owen. I think as well his character changed in a way that I can't even say how. But as you said, tonally it's so different in Fallen Kingdom. I think he is so different in Fallen Kingdom to how he was in Jurassic World, and it just feels like this rushed, overhyped, like it feels more blockbustery than it needs to be. And I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. And also Fallen Kingdom script, it's kind of weak.
Well, it's funny because rewatching it, again, it's that thing of like rewatching certain, like Jurassic World for me was like taking a dip for a while as far as like what I liked. For some reason, JP3 has just been like, now I just love this movie so much weirdly.
Yes.
But
Everybody does now. I don't know
JP3.
what happened.
but I think it's because it's fun to talk about. I feel like like even just as a community, it's just so much fun to like talk about the Kirbys. And listening to your interview, Jack, with Shelley Johnson was so illuminating to like hear that.
Oh, thank you for listening to that, man.
Oh, it's such a great interview. Like, I feel like you got a lot out of him that I don't think people like. You know, it's hard when you're, talking to somebody who worked on a Jurassic movie, because either it's something they're passionate about or it's a job. And I felt like you got the passion out of him and like what he really wanted to talk about, or like almost like therapy of like things that he hadn't thought about in a long time. Like, oh God, yeah, that's right. Alexander Payne created the Kirbys. Yeah. What?
Yeah.
Right.
He is a passionate human being. He is so passionate about his work. And I was so lucky that we actually had a 2-hour Skype call maybe a couple of weeks before the interview, where we talked off the record about Jurassic 3 and Jurassic Park 4. And
Lucky.
I learned some stuff about that movie, about Jurassic Park 3, the production of it, that people would never believe. Like, it went through a lot. And we already know what it went through, but man, it must have been crazy to actually be a part of that. But yeah, he was so passionate about it. And I think what got me... I was sweating. When I finished that interview, I was dripping. I was so like the nerves of speaking to somebody in his position. For me as well, like, making films and music videos and things, like I really idolize his work, and I genuinely used The Wolfman. I studied that movie when I shot things in the forest at night. I was using his lighting setups, and then I got the opportunity like 5 years later to speak to him. So it worked on a couple of levels. It was really cool. But his passion for JP3 and everything he was saying and everything he's saying he wanted to do if he got the chance to do another one is everything I want in a Jurassic. He wanted to go darker with it.
Yeah.
And
well,
that was cool.
It's funny that you say that, to tie back to the new franchise. That I think personally, there is a lot of my love for Claire comes from just liking Bryce Dallas Howard, to be honest. It's like she seems like she genuinely cares about these movies, and she's just a very like charming and infectious person. So I can totally see from your perspective, Jack, of like, well, Bryce Dallas Howard is this way. Why can't they make the character as likable as she is during the behind the scenes or something like that?
Yeah, I just feel it's cheesy. I think that was the thing with Fallen Kingdom, is the dialogue was cheesy. The characterizations were cheesy. I don't see any real development between the two of them either. Like, yeah, fair enough, she's, went from capitalist to naturalist in 4 years, arguably. But it's the same story. She starts again in Fallen Kingdom, and her and Owen aren't together, and then the whole point is that they get to this point where they are together at the end. But that's what happened in Jurassic World.
Yeah.
I didn't really see why that happened again, why that repeated the process. It makes me worry about their relationship in Dominion. Is it going to repeat the same thing?
Oh yeah.
Or is, obviously I think it will progress, but it's just little things like that were unnecessary. I think when you watch Jurassic Park and then you watch one of the new movies, I don't know how you can see that I don't know how you can really compare them.
Yeah. Well, and two, it's with these movies, I feel like it's this, I think nowadays we're seeing this of like, how do you deal with bringing a franchise back to life? How do you honor the past while, forging ahead? And, it's been mixed results and things like that. And, I think with it's the kind of thing, I think Adventure Collectibles was talking about this a long time ago. It's like Jurassic World only exists because we want to see a fully functioning park. But narratively, Fallen Kingdom works in a way that it's like we almost didn't really need Jurassic World. It's just like, it feels like the studio has to juggle so many things. And maybe with Dominion, it's like the first movie where they kind of, in a way, I keep referencing this Forbes article about Universal trying to position Jurassic as like the new Fast and the Furious, where like Dominion, like I think I was saying in the chat, like
that's my fear.
But I mean, like in the sense that like the Dominion's gonna be an ending, but also a new beginning where they can be more. It can be more integrated, or more thought out as far as like lore and things and stuff go. Because we've never seen a Jurassic movie with 7 returning characters or over 7.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right. I think, and as well with Colin, I think he's finally getting to make the movie that he wanted to make. I think you can look at Jurassic World anywhere. You can look at it that Colin rewrote it and it was his movie, but the studio influence on that movie would have been crazy. The same with Fallen Kingdom. Movies have changed. The industry's changed. So I guess it's that point where we'd never get a Jurassic Park these days. This is how the industry makes money. It has to be this big blockbuster that can also sell toys, that can also do everything else. And I think we discussed this on a previous podcast where because of COVID and because of things like that, there's probably less studio execs on set. So I have a feeling they're probably able now to, they're probably enjoying the hell out of it, getting to do all the things they want without all these voices behind them saying, "Oh, actually, let's try a take like this," or let's try this because it will sell better. I think Dominion's going to surprise a lot of people, and I think again that's where more of my excitement comes from.
Wow. Yeah, no, I never thought of that. I mean, and also the idea of even bringing back a character like Dotson, it's to me that's the most interesting stuff. And you're saying thinking about the studio, it's like at some point there had to be a meeting where it's like, okay, we're going to bring back this character. Who? Dodson. Biosyn. What are you talking about? Biosyn? What? It's never been mentioned in any of the movies before. No, but this character, he, in the books, he had this whole thing. It's like, okay, well, what about that actor? Oh, he's in prison. Okay. Okay. Who else do we, it's like they had to have discussions, and it has been very strange. And I've been listening to Outpost, and it's like you guys commenting on all this new, like Nedry is 2020. Like what the heck?
Right.
Like the Barbasol can, this.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. It's so weird in a way.
It is. And it's not even the Barbasol can logo. It's not the design anymore, which makes it even funnier. They're selling all this merch. Barbasol looks different now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think Chris made a good point that they are pushing Nedry hard right now, and I think that's because of the Dodgson link. He's obviously going to play an important role in Dominion, and whether like Lockwood, whether or not this goes back years, his Dodgson's involvement.
Are we going to see a de-aged Wayne Knight?
Oh man.
He actually looks really good for his age.
Oh really?
I mean, the other day I had to Google him just to be one of those people. Are you still alive? Because you don't really hear about Wayne that much anymore. But
no.
Even 25, 26 years later, he still looks relatively the same.
It's him and BD Wong. Villainy keeps you young,
Exactly. I feel like you could bring him on and just do a slight little bit, of that de-aging like they did with, with a lot of characters, but how Marvel does it, the Marvel approach, and it would look great.
Yeah, Brad brought up Westworld, and I thought that they did that really well because I mean, Jack, you can speak to this with lighting and cinematography, but they kind of did the half Tarkin where it's reflections and mirrors and from far away and stuff like that too.
That's what Star Wars did wrong, I felt. When they brought back Leia.
Yeah.
And sorry, not Leia, but I'm not that clued in on Star Wars, I have to admit.
Peter Cushing?
Yes, when he was in the ship, I don't know the name of the ship. He was standing there and he was in the reflection of the glass, and it was perfect. And then he turns around and it's a VFX face. It's completely fake. And I just thought, why didn't they just keep him in reflection like that? It would have sold the effect better. We know the actor's not with us anymore. And I feel like they, as you said, about the cinematography and lighting wise, there's so much they can get away with, which leads into VFX. Why do the VFX in Jurassic Park still hold up?
Yeah.
Well, it's because they're in shadow most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It, I mean, I keep pushing the de-aging angle thing because, or it's not that I necessarily want it, but it's almost like that's the thing that Jurassic hasn't done yet that now every modern franchise has indulged in, and it's almost like, okay, what fancy, that also feels like maybe a studio thing too, where it's like, okay, what work can we give our visual effects people? It's like, okay, we've done dinosaurs, we're gonna do feathers, maybe feathers are the big thing, but yeah, I feel like de-aging is kind of the final thing that Jurassic hasn't done yet.
So you think are both of you, are we thinking flashback scenes specifically? There has to be one?
I think it'll, I think if they do a flashback scene to, I think if they do a flashback scene to the original park, because I mean, again, as much as I love Fallen Kingdom, it does like create a lot of new backstory that just was never existed before, and I can jump through the hoops to buy that that it was never mentioned before because it's his secret partner, blah 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 blah, based on the book, whatever. But I think it would make this franchise a lot better if they found a way to make it count even more. So I think if you had a flashback, you have original Maisie in there somehow messing around with, somebody from the original movie or something like it just would make it feel like more thought out to me.
That would be interesting. Like you're talking Maisie's mom.
Yeah, original Maisie. I've been calling her original Maisie, but I don't know. You could do Alien Resurrection, like Maisie number 1 or something.
I was thinking about that because we talked about this on the pod a couple of pods ago, I believe. But it was like a question of, are we gonna do we need to see the can? Like we know the can, and like you're pointing out, like they're pushing Nedry. But if anything, the question to me is like, how did bias? The question Dominion's gonna have to answer is, how did bias start? Where did they get the technology? Where did they get the DNA? Like, did they basically mimic what InGen did? And like, it would be kind of interesting to see if, like, flashback right after Nublar, it was like, hey, where the F is that can? But unfortunately, it's under mud. It's trapped. We're never going to see it again. But it would be interesting to see, like, a group of Biosin coming in on the island and kind of just doing a clean sweep of things and then running off with it and going off into the sunset like the
and that's the implication. That's the inciting incident that leads to, well, what are they up to now? How far has it gone? What haven't we seen? I think the thing for me with Lockwood was when the actor spoke about his role before the movie came out, and he revealed all this about him being Hammond's ex-business partner. I was on board. I loved it. I thought it was such a cool idea. It's expanding the lore. It's giving us something new. And I think the more time has gone on, I've just thought, but it's so irrelevant. It doesn't really do anything. They didn't do anything with it. The same with the human clone. So what? It doesn't. We haven't got there yet. We haven't got to the point where it's relevant or interesting.
Yeah, I think with Lockwood, it's more like, hey, this is where Steve Jobs and I started our garage.
Yeah, sure.
True. We built a computer, like. Yeah. So I mean, I think like in a lot of ways, like it's cool to know, but exactly, like it doesn't need to really expand beyond that.
Yeah, well, that's why I think that because totally, Jack. It's like, what's the point of all this reveal if it doesn't mean something fundamentally for the story and where it could go? Because it's like, for me, Lockwood's that whole thing is less interesting if they don't somehow continue that's why I think having original Maisie, but I feel like that's what they're doing with having in Fallen Kingdom when he says like she would have saved them all, and then it has this very pointed shot of the original Jurassic Park model, and then this epic sweeping, like it's like, why have this moment if it in then Fallen Kingdom if it's not gonna go anywhere? Hopefully.
Ooh, I just thought of this. Are you talking? Did you just describe this? But I just thought of this epic Spielberg shot of like showing the model in the room, and then it like slowly pans in, but it's like actually becoming the jungle. Whoa. And then we're going back into time, and then it's Maisie like in a crew of Maisie 1.0, just Maisie OG.
Ooh, I like 1.0. That's
just like in a group of like some cool 94 Mercedes, of course, and Explorers.
Gotta be Mercedes.
Probably Mercedes. But yeah, I could see like that's what I liked about Bayona's I guess it wasn't cinematographer
Oscar
Forer.
Thank you. That is definitely something that I did enjoy a lot about Fallen Kingdom, that I thought was very
the best thing about it.
Yeah, truly.
So
it was a gorgeous movie, arguably one of the best looking as well, which makes it that much harder for me to not actually like the movie itself.
I mean, just continuing off the whole Maisie ending, I mean, I guess where do you, because with these movies we don't have, I mean, that's the thing with this franchise, is that we don't have as much stuff to tie each other between years, and there's always this jump in development. It's like we don't see Claire become become the naturalist. We don't see her start the DPG. I was thinking, and I shared this Rick and Morty clip that my friend Marissa thought about when talking about Dominion is like, do you think they're gonna have a scene where they reintroduce every character, or do you think that when Dominion starts, it's gonna be like Lowry and Barry and Zia and Franklin? They're just working for Claire. They've got it's almost like we're catching up with them after they've been working together for a year. Do you think that they're gonna go, like, is the trio gonna be already on a mission, or are we gonna literally see Claire like knock on the door, Sam Neill Grant opens the door and he's like, "Who is that?" And then
the recruitment,
and then you hear like Laura Dern be like, "Honey, who is that?" And it's like they're already together. And then you look in the bathroom and it's got a new paint and tile job, so that's our Kirby reference. Like, do you guys like, what do you guys want as far as like bringing everyone back together?
Not that, but I like that, how that played out. I think for everybody to be reintroduced, especially with the OG cast, would be like, I don't know. You'd have to do it in a very clever way. Otherwise, it's just like, I think it eats up too much time.
Yeah.
And kind of takes yourself out of what's going on. Like you're literally like knowing that this is just an introduction scene, which I think Jurassic Park and the characters that are all going to be brought back, which I am surprised, frankly, that there are this many characters from the original that are going to be just all introduced, or not reintroduced, excuse me, that it's just going to be interesting to see how, are we just going to cut into it and be like, Grant and Ellie are off gallivanting, like, F this, we don't want to do or deal with dinosaurs in the world, or
that's kind of what worries me, is that there's so much to do in Dominion. There's so many plot lines they have to continue. There's so many new characters. Let's not forget Owen and Claire are the lead characters, and then they've got the original three back, which everybody's so excited to see. My worry from the beginning has been, are they going to get the actual screen time they deserve, or is it going to end up a little bit like Jeff Goldblum's role in Fallen Kingdom, which was entirely unnecessary?
Well, their filming schedule is pretty long, and and there's been I think discussion both from Goldblum and Neil that their involvement is heavy in this. So that's the other question too, is it's just like, how do you not take away from Claire and Owen? And it's almost like, kind of like, have they reached, did they almost reach like this kind of, not peak, but conclusion to a part of their story within Dominion, that now we don't have to focus on them as much, that we can bring in all these characters to do this like grand opera scene at the end?
Well, it could be, I mean, because that's to me, and I don't know if it had to do with my age of when I saw Jurassic Park, but like, in a way, Jurassic Park felt like the first movie, and still feels like one of the only movies where, yes, Grant is technically the main protagonist because he has like a very clear, quote unquote, like clear arc, beginning, middle, and end. But it's like, in my head, I go back and forth between like, well, now Hammond's the protagonist, and now Malcolm is the protagonist, and now Ellie's the protagonist. Like, the kids are the protagonist. Like, what other movie has that kind of beautiful ensemble where it still manages to give, I mean, my problem with Jurassic World is that the kids just don't do anything for the story to me. Like, they don't wrap up their story in any, it just, they kind of meanders off at the end. Yeah. And so is Dominion gonna be, because Ryan, you bring up a really good point. To me, it's like weirdly how, not how irrelevant Claire and Owen have become, but they sort of are almost at the end of Fallen Kingdom sort of realizing that they're just part of this bigger thing, and maybe that opens room for, Claire is maybe the driving force, but we don't need to, like, we get to be part of the original trio's new journey, or whatever journey they're on in this movie as well.
I think the difficulty is that the Owen and Claire, in a way, it's kind of their fault that we've got to this point, so it's hard to like them, for me anyway. It's their fault. They were a part of it. Owen trained these raptors. Although, only Blue is out there now in ET Town. So I don't know.
No, look, it's Maisie's fault.
Yeah.
She pushed
now
the
it's
button.
her fault.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and also, yeah, I mean, pushing Maisie. I mean, to me, I feel like Maisie and Blue are going to be, they're going to be doing. I almost think they're going to be together for some reason. I don't know why I think this, but I feel like they're going to be together at some point.
See, this is where I go back on our last pod where I feel like there could be just the tiniest shred of something within Maisie's DNA that makes her have some sort of better connection with dinosaurs specifically. Ooh. Like not just her love for them, because within Dominion, like it's not just that, but like she loves dinosaurs, guys. Like she is us. She is the fan of Jurassic Park and the dinosaurs. So but like, I'd like to think I got a little T-Rex blood in me. So like but it'd be interesting to see if she actually does have something within her that like, because Owen has just that imprint, right? Yeah. With Blue, he couldn't just like go up to any other raptor and be like, yo, hands up and be cool with.
That'd be a good end for him though, if they just dropped him on Sauna. The original Sauna raptors were there, both sets, both species, and he's trying to speak to them, and it's it would take seconds, but it's an interesting point. And Alex sent me a message before. With a picture from, I think maybe the behind the scenes when Maisie is first introduced and she jumps out and scares I forget the name.
Iris,
yeah. She's wearing a dinosaur tail.
Yeah, oh my god. Yeah, I noticed that in some shots.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a little hint, but then I think, was it Ryan, you also said on the last pod, like when she jumps up,
specifically you hear they just do a good job with both with the sound editing and with how the camera manipulation into making you wonder at first, like, is Iris being stalked by an actual dinosaur?
Yeah.
And then you hear this almost, like I said, growl, and I think they do some sort of like kind of almost like low, ample tiger roar underneath her or something when she does her, like, rewatch the scene, and there's like this little behind that's not her normal, but it's just underneath there.
Wow.
And it's also the music, it's Giacchino's. It's so, but the way that it's everything that they do within that 10 seconds, to me, makes me think that there actually might be a little bit more to Maisie, But I think that's also their version of saying, hey, like, this is her. She's not just human; she's a clone. But to me, it's like it goes beyond that. Like, well, you made her. We know how they make these clones, guys. Like,
yeah.
So what's in her? So anyway.
Yeah,
it'd just be interesting to see if that, again, and then if that does, that's just even more to add in Dominion. That's like, fuck.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. What is ultimately, because to me, part of Maisie, why I think she's one of the best kids in the franchise for sure. Just because what I liked about Fallen Kingdom was the concept of learning because there's no way you would really know the villain's plot and like. Without Maisie, like she's watching the villain plot essentially, like an observer, and I kind of like that as like a non-typical way instead of just having scenes where villains are speaking, because that would just be so conventional. So it's like kind of cool that you got to see it through a kid's perspective and then having to figure that out. But yeah, ultimately, is Maisie just a metaphor for like, because she's part, or because she's a clone like the dinosaurs that we should care about the dinosaurs? Or is there going to be something, even more meaningful there or deeper?
Who knows? It's good. I don't know, but yeah, to tackle that on top of Claire, Owen, Ian, Ellie, Grant. I'm gonna go just keep naming everybody now because it's like literally everybody almost everybody within the past 6 movies, and then Dodson, like, dude. Where you been this whole time, man? Like, so, but it's interesting how some of this information, like, just slowly has kind of been leaking out, if you will.
Well, did you see the interview with Jeff Goldblum where he talks Dominion and he talks reuniting with Ellie and Alan?
Ugh, that makes me happy already. Because I mean, I think, to be frank, like, I think Colin probably watched Star Wars and is like, okay, here it's not about like what he's gonna do different or what he's gonna do the same or something, but it's we're going to have 2 case studies about how to bring franchises back. And so you have one franchise that slowly sort of separated itself from the original part, and then I think it's been interesting how Dominion or like across the Jurassic franchise, the Jurassic World part of the franchise, they've slowly reintroduced old elements. And so I think that notion of having our trio together is exciting, instead of like, we just have scenes where it's like Sam Neill in a lab and Laura Dern.
Yeah, the fact that they'll actually be together in a room, however it is.
With dinosaurs.
His quote was, the three of us were in a tiny little space and we were being menaced by, and then he says he can't say, but a surprising faction of prehistoric creatures that you've never seen before. He's teasing a lot, and he's teasing they're in, what does he say? He says,
confined space, or
tiny little space, and we're being menaced by, like they're trapped or something. And that just, it tells you, they're not just there. They're not just going to be standing around, giving their opinion. They're involved with whatever it is that is happening.
Well, yeah, and that to me is what makes, again, I think Dotson's involvement, but especially Laura Dern, because I got to attend the Battle at Big Rock theatrical screening that they had in Los Angeles, and then Laura Dern came out at the end and announced, hey, not only am I coming back, but Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum, and Colin saying that, Laura Dern's going to have they're not going to give a tiny cameo to Laura Dern. Like, she's going to have a role.
Hell no.
And to me, that stuff is so fascinating, because it's how do you, Lost World, Malcolm was not coerced, but he was, sort of took it upon himself to go to the island and be part of the adventure because Sarah was
he had
there.
No other choice.
Yeah,
I feel.
And then, JP3, I guess Sam Neill's Alan Grant was on hard times and was desperate.
Yes.
But it's like, I think, you want to have characters invested, and you want to have people. For me personally, sometimes it helps if the characters are invested in what the adventure they're going on. But it's like, why would Ellie and Grant ever come back? Or, excuse me, why would Ellie or Alan ever help out anyone ever? Like, what happens that they have to come back?
Well, it's interesting that you ask that question, Stephen, because a big portion of like kind of what we're going to talk about today is what has been slowly oozing out of the interweb about that exact same question. Like, how are all of these characters? What is bringing everyone together? And there's not a lot of concrete information out there, but it's definitely been fun to speculate, and then also see a lot of kind of re-evolving rumors.
Yeah.
And because I think we definitely know by now that Grant and Ellie especially, well, Grant especially, but like, there's no way anybody can come out of the woodwork again and do this proposal like there's been in these previous movies where it's like, I have this situation and I need you to go handle it.
You crazy
and
son of a bitch. I'm in.
I know you don't want to do it, and you're going to say no, but guess what? In about 15 minutes, we're going to see a little prologue of you arriving to the island. So,
a shot of the plane.
Exactly. So these characters we're going to be finding them kind of on their own journeys in this Jurassic World, and it's going to be interesting to see how their journey meets up with Claire and Owen's journey. Jack, do you want to talk
Sure.
about...
So I guess from this point forward, we will be talking about the leaked plot synopsis, and we'll also be discussing the set photos from Malta, which have leaked, spoiled a few things. But so more than a few months ago, maybe half a year ago, maybe a year ago, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a leaked synopsis for Jurassic World Dominion, and it goes as such. It says, when young Maisie is abducted by dino poachers, Owen and Claire set out to find and rescue her, with their journey taking them to a dinosaur habitat operated by a global corporation with a possibly sinister agenda that's even now being investigated by Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler.
Wow.
What does it mean?
Yeah, so obviously this came from one of Universal's websites, like a DVD. I think it was like a DVD site.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
it was an accidental leak, obviously, but it also might not be true. These movies go through so many iterations of script. This could have been put up by I don't know, a rogue employee who wanted to sabotage something. This could have been put up by accident. It could be from an old draft. This could have been the synopsis, when Jurassic World had just come out and they were just going through potential ideas.
True.
Well, I was just going to say really
go ahead.
quickly, what I do like about this synopsis is the idea that I like that there's a world, like a bigger world out there. And so the idea that if Alan and Ellie are somehow back in the game by the time Dominion starts, to me is exciting. And again, if Universal really, if they're starting to invest more in this franchise, I mean, you could do whole books or comics or stuff about, pre-Dominion of how Ellen and Ellie, whether they get back together or not, I don't care. But like, to me, it's like that idea of like why A New Hope was so compelling was like this reference to the Clone Wars and like these things that like, it's like with the Barbasol can being buried in the mud, it like evokes something more than what's on screen. And so to me,
Sure.
I love the idea that Alan and Ellie might be doing their own thing by the time Dominion starts.
Yeah, I think that makes it unique, and it makes it so we don't have to almost have that recruitment where Claire's knocking on doors.
Exactly.
Alan, can you come back, please? But I think there's a few things we can take from that synopsis, right? So the global corporation with a possibly sinister agenda. I mean, that's at this point it's got to be Bison, right?
Yeah.
And what's the sinister agenda that's now being investigated by Grant and Ellie? Could that be just more dinosaurs? Could it be more hybrids? Could it be something much more scary than that? Like, are we going to get a return to something from the novels like the DX virus? Could it be more of a malicious attempt at that?
Biological. That's interesting.
Well,
It could go down any route, but I think that Colin has always kind of circled back to the military aspect.
As much as he's wanted to stay away from it.
I know, and like I like that how it was kind of still there within Dominion, but like it was only within the auction buyers, right? Like these are what these animals can provide for you or do for you. Think about them in the field, and it's like
Yes,
okay.
and Ankylosaurus is a tank.
yeah.
Yeah,
That
like okay, that actually no, it would explode, but like,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
yeah. So I wonder if that's, but like, I feel like that's kind of already been played out to an idea, and like I don't know. I don't feel like, and for me, it wasn't a popular idea, and I don't feel like it necessarily is a popular. Like we're not going to see that. I don't think in any way. Like we're not going to see militarized dinosaurs, but that might be part of the aspect. But I like what you just said. Like I didn't think about the biological part of it.
Well, in my thing too, it's like I think a lot of us have been operating as far as speculating in the parameters of truly a few things that Colin has said, like no more hybrids, and we're not going to see dinosaurs destroying cities, which I really like, and the idea that when that, I think it was either a Deadline or article about Colin saying that they basically filmed any crowd scenes in the first couple weeks. I'm like, whoa, like this movie, like you're not gonna have big crowd. So it's like I'm kind of working within those parameters, but then it does make it puzzling because you're like, what is this movie gonna look like? What is it about? Like, if you're not having scenes of crowds of people running away from dinosaurs, if you're not having hybrids, like, but again, the leaked photos, it's like, well, but that's like that seems like an army of dinosaurs to me. They might not be hybrids,
Malta.
but
Yeah.
So you're talking about the leaked photos from
Malta, yeah.
Yeah. So those were pretty cool. It started with just somebody that was renting an Airbnb, and in the same street they were filming Dominion. So they took a couple of pictures. The first is it's not an animatronic, obviously. It's like a puppet head.
Stand-in, yeah.
Yeah, it's a maquette stand-in probably, which they've been doing with the previous films.
It always it always makes me laugh because it's like we know by this point that's not how that dinosaur's going to look specifically. Like it's an on-set prop,
Right.
Yeah? And the amount of discussion that it generates on what species is this, why doesn't it look right? Like it's incredible to watch.
Well, I mean, this was my initial thought, and my initial thought in regards to, but only because when Outpost released the behind-the-scenes photo with the Sorna crate, my head instantly went to, because the two maquettes, there was like an orangey looking raptory looking thing, and then like a white raptory looking thing, and I was like, oh, did Biosyn steal Sorna raptor eggs, and are we gonna get like how insane would it be like if those turned out to be JP3 and Lost World Raptors, but now the bad guys, quote unquote, are like using them for their own game, like just as like a lore mindfuck. Sorry, I forgot if I can swear or not. If a mind melt,
you can definitely swear on
this fucking. I was like, wait, I've heard you guys swear before on this podcast.
Yeah, we swear.
No.
We can't help it. We tried to stop, but you know.
But you know, I just as like a lore mindfuck, how weird would that be? Like if we're, except you know they look kind of beefy, like or feathered possibly or something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The picture, one of the pictures, one of the two raptors. They're obviously not perfect, but it's hard to not think. Is that the female and male raptor from?
Oh,
JP3?
It has a very distinct. Yeah, the JP. I mean, we've only seen that in JP3 and in the Lost World. So I mean, it's like they didn't really. And
is it even a raptor? That's
yeah.
I'm gonna speak for myself and probably Chris here. No, because we've seen the maquette stand-ins before, like you know, especially like what they did with the. It was interesting with Jurassic World how they used the Indominus Rex, the small one, but they were using it more for perspective, with the camera angle. But that was literally how the Indominus looked. The Indoraptor maquette similar as well, but remember it was more like a inflated balloon, almost like this kind of like just oval shaped with like a printed on nylon screened Indoraptor.
You know,
yeah, exactly. It could be your cuddle pillow at night. that was just attached to a stick. So that. And yeah, we've seen with the T-Rex stand-in non-animatronic maquette that also had digital manipulation, but they could have made that look like a raptor easy. And so there's distinctions underneath it when you look at the Airbnb photo, like it's got some quills underneath the chin.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to be a different species. A lot of people have been arguing what exactly, and it could still look very different from what that maquette looks like. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be some variation of raptor for sure, and it looks bigger. It definitely looks bigger, like a beefier, almost. People have said Deinonychus or Utah raptor. I think we might see something, though. It'd be interesting to see if they are stealing or borrowing parts, biosin.
And how did they get to Malta? Because if we're presuming this is actually set in Malta as well, where we've seen them filming it, it's got to be Malta, right?
Or some European, Mediterranean, Europe-y place.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
but it's how did they get there? And if it is, as you said, Stephen, if it is the JP3 raptors or spawn of them or something, how and why?
Yeah.
And also the video that was leaked. So we saw. Owen's character, funnily enough, it's a body double because Owen's not going there. And the rumor on the ground in Malta is apparently it's because Chris Pratt refused, which we know isn't true. But it's funny how those kind of whispers get around on set.
Yeah, I think it could have been a lot of just like, hey, Chris, we don't necessarily need you to go, so better safe than sorry.
Let's save our insurance. We don't want one of our stars to get COVID-19.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well,
but we saw him riding on a motorcycle down a busy street. It looks very Mission Impossible-esque. And then there's also like a car crash sequence, right? Like a street where obviously something's happening and all these cars are crashing into each other. So whatever's happening there, we're not getting dinosaurs in cities, but there's going to be some sort of outbreak or terror that comes from these dinosaurs.
Well, and my question too that I think a lot about is, did Biosyn get technology, or did they end up being secretly successful, and now we're finally seeing what the fruits of their labor have been, or was there something that happened in Fallen Kingdom that allowed for them to, make dinosaurs or do whatever, like
finally get their hands on some dino DNA.
Well, we know that the Barbasol canister is coming back. We've discussed this before. What shape or form, we have no idea.
It's so funny. I was like. I think this was on the Jurassic Park podcast. Brad and Aaron were saying it's like, what if we just see a scene of like, it's when you introduce like the evil villain and he's like shaving, so it's like threatening, and then it just shows him like put the can back and like that's actually just it. It has nothing to do with the plot or anything. It's like, God damn it.
I mean, it could be. I mean, I thought if Dodgson's back, which he is, and we're obviously going to see him in some form of office or something like that, like his headquarters. Maybe it's just a prop that's behind him. But I remember we saw those Instagram posts and we saw the company that made it, and they had specifically said they wanted the original one for the movie. So it's obviously a factor, and whether or not that's from a flashback, you know, we might even get that flashback. We might get the John Sayles opening.
Oh my god!
Where somebody goes back to the island, but it's actually 94 or something like that, or even, you know, weeks after the park, or even days after the park incident, and it's Biosyn, and maybe it just wasn't enough for them to create the full whatever they needed. Maybe something happened then in Fallen Kingdom, and they were able to then complete this, but it just got out of control because maybe they've been waiting for so long to be able to do this. I don't know.
And you fill in the hole in. Now you're making a baby dinosaur.
Yeah.
And now we can make.
They're all freaking out.
What?
So this.
I was gonna,
Sorry.
I was going to say really quickly too. Yeah, it's like, I mean, again, I don't think they're going to go this direction, but it's like, yeah, like again, you do have the kind of alien resurrection moment of like Dotson trying to make dinosaurs, but the DNA found in the can was so degraded or something that like, you know, you could have some good horror there, you know, in a sense of like, kill me, you know, like this raptor that's just born like half deformed and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'd like to see. That'd be freaky.
Yeah. The dark side of making dinosaurs, you know, like the stuff that Lost World, the book, got into, the notion of like, yeah, this wasn't perfect the first time. These dinosaurs didn't come out. Like, I imagine Dr. Wu had some pretty awful moments of like having just to put down some male form dinosaur fetuses and stuff. And it's like, it haunts him at night, you know?
Yeah. Maybe that's the reason he's the character he is now. Maybe he just lost his good faith. But this leaked synopsis was actually confirmed a month ago by, and again, still rumor, but Making Star Wars, they were at Pinewood, I think. The Pinewood sources told them about the movie in passing, and the bullet points were: Maisie is kidnapped by dino poachers. Owen and Claire track them down to find a dino habitat owned by Biosyn. Oh, we were right. Which Dodgson from the first Jurassic Park is involved with. And then Alan and Ellie are investigating Biosyn, which is how their paths cross. So this was confirmed by Making Star Wars.
And then
is it .net?
And then you said this was 1 month ago. Wow, that's such a huge jump from that Universal one and this. So that feels pretty. That feels pretty like strong to me. You know, if I mean, again, it could be making up, but that feels pretty strong to me as far as leaks go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this person could have just, you know, read that old synopsis and wanted to profit off that. True. But we have no idea. But it sounds likely. I mean, that makes a logical sense for why their paths would cross in the first place. How you introduce these old characters in a legitimate way. Well, they're not going to be oblivious to everything that's going on in the world. They're going to, you know, after you got to think about it. They suffered in '93 at that original park, and then in 2005, this Jurassic World opens, and the whole world is so pumped about it, and they're just like, "What is happening?" And then it took 10 years for something to go wrong, and then Fallen Kingdom. I think that's the point where they'd stand up and go, "Right, I have to put a stop to this. I don't know how, but I have to be involved." And maybe that's what leads them to Biosyn.
Yeah, well, I like. I was just joking with Clayton because he didn't actually put this forward, but like he did a video where it almost, not that I think it was this interview with Swerve, but like not that Malcolm would be a villain per se, but like in the you know, he basically suggests, you know, let the dinosaurs die in Fallen Kingdom, and so I wonder if they're gonna push that angle of him, you know, this idea like you're saying, Jack, of like, you know, this is, you know, I had this horrible experience. It's none of my business what happens, but maybe they're like, enough is enough. And right now, our perspective of having been with these dinosaurs, having a history with the park, is now relevant to, you know, saving the day or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, I think it makes the most sense. So Malcolm would be a little bit more like, I need to sabotage whatever anyone is doing to stop everything.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. Because we talk about story changes, and apparently there was a rumor at one point, because Jeff Goldblum supposedly had a much larger role within Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom than his brief cameo, and it involved a bit of a sabotage. Like, he was kind of it circulated around him kind of being It was more of a story. Okay, how do I do this in 30 seconds? They were going to be moving the island, the dinosaurs off the island because of the volcano to Sorna specifically, and Arcadia, the ship, was going to be put into play, Lockwood and all this other stuff. But Malcolm was like, yeah, let's move them. But then it was something about Lockwood or Malcolm like basically being like, no, I can't let this move forward because there's been too many mistakes of stupid people, and was going to end up being in some way kind of the villain to sabotage / allow the dinosaurs to die. But that with a completely different route.
Well, with it's always funny to think back at like rumors before a movie comes out and then to look back afterwards and be like, was that ever real? Because one of them, besides having the rest of the trio and Lex and Tim in the courtroom scene where like the back of the heads of those people kind of does look like it could be that crew. Then also I remember hearing a rumor of like Owen punching Malcolm in the face, and I'm like, was that ever anything, or was that just like again, you know, what's been fun about growing up with Jurassic Park is like I finally tracked down the source of the idea of Grant being on the island in JP3 and being more like a Robinson Crusoe kind of figure. Like growing up, it's like,
how do you mean you tracked down the source?
Well, I mean, I found an article on Dan's JP3 page where Joe Johnston says something like that. So, but it was one of those things where I feel like as a kid you grow up hearing those rumors and you sort of take it for granted, and then I was like, wait, where did that? Is there an article where it confirms this? You know, because a lot of websites, like, you know, it's just those are like our urban legends, you know, kind of thing.
Sure. I think expanding on what Ryan said, from what I heard, there was 2 ships.
Oh.
One was the Arcadia and the other was a Gene ship, which was Dr. Wu's ship, where they were taking all the embryos and things like that from Nublar. And I'm not sure how the 2 played hand in hand, but Malcolm was on one of the ships, and the idea was sabotage. And we'd also heard about this scene where Malcolm tells Owen and Claire, this is all your fault.
Wow.
You know, we're here because of you. And that's something I was really disappointed that wasn't in the movie in the end, was that kind of interaction where you have somebody from the original cast saying, you guys screwed up. You know, this is your fault and you need to fix this, which would have given Claire's complete shift in character more, you know, validity, I think.
Well, and to your point, I mean, that actually would be more powerful than what we got in a way, because it's like we know we don't like Mills, like we know he's a scumbag, so him saying it's their fault wouldn't have as much weight as a character from the original movie,
somebody that we respect so much,
like,
and has already been through this before. And Sorna was supposed to play a part in Fallen Kingdom, whether it was just by name, but I remember speaking to somebody who told us that Malcolm was on one of the islands at some point in Fallen Kingdom too. Right. So again, I don't know if that was ever true, but I'm sure they went through iterations of the script where things like that happened, and we know from photos of the script that were from the set. I think Bryce Dallas Howard maybe put a behind-the-scenes photo up, and you could see the script in the background, and you could see the whole third act had been rewritten.
Oh, wow.
And it looked like half of the second act as well. You know, where they have different color pages for different drafts of the script kind of thing. So I don't know. I think a lot changed in that movie, even leading up to filming, that probably cut down Malcolm's role significantly. Didn't Jeff Goldblum make a comment or something about how he was going to be filming more? I swear there was like some tidbit from an interview.
Yeah, I mean, that would be disappointing as an actor, you know, to find out, like, you know, you're going to have this big role, and then they're like, nah, we're just going to pay for a cameo, essentially.
He got Laura Dern in JP3 style role.
Yeah. You know, I mean, really, truly, I mean, but, you know, what was I going to say about that? That's why I think we want this art book, because it's like, I want to see those early concept art. I want to see those early drafts. It's like, we don't have any of that stuff. And it just feels like when we're, you know, I'm tired of scraping around dirt and bone, you know, what was it that Sarah says, you know, like, it's like, you know, I feel like as a community, we keep pretty good records about like this stuff, but it's like, I just want the art book to show us these versions, like some like cool concept art of like Malcolm. Oh my god, you could do Jeff Goldblum like on the ship from Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, like totally.
I think you're right though, but maybe that's why they're holding back on the book itself. Maybe because they don't want us to presume what Dominion's going to be. Maybe they don't want to spoil Dominion, because the concept art that we have seen, the stuff that's leaked, I mean, we were discussing it on the last episode, the black and white Fallen Kingdom, like it shows concepts that would definitely for the third movie, or at least wider concepts of what the whole trilogy will do.
Yeah.
And I think maybe if they dropped an art book now, it might give people too much of an anticipation as to what they're going to see, and it might really affect. Maybe that's just the reason they're holding back on that. But I agree with you, like the concept art, the storyboards. I mean, I'd even love to read versions of the script.
Yeah. Well, and also too, I mean, the problem with the Star Wars art books, which I love, but they basically don't show you the third act in the books, and then it's so you feel like you're getting half a book, and the next year you have to buy, the Last Jedi art book had stuff from Force Awakens that they didn't want because it comes out, like a month before. But that to me, like what the most mind blowing sort of concept art to just not seeing the concept of the movie is the Spinosaurus coming back in Fallen Kingdom. It's like that still blows my mind, because it's like, the name of this session is What About Cooper? Like, we love JP3, but it's like the idea that J.I. Bayona at one point, or Colin, considered putting the Spino back in. It's a fan service thing in a way, because it feels just like it would just be the handful of us, that would appreciate it. Like that, to me, that blows my mind still, that was on the table at some point.
Yeah. And it's still something I would love to see as well. I don't know how they could do that unless they went back to Sauna, or unless somebody had taken it from Sauna. But see, the Spinosaurus, like I loved it more with time and age. The T-Rex was always king, or queen, but the Spino, when that came along, it's just this, I don't know, it's just this awesome design. It doesn't look anything like a Spinosaurus actually looked like. It's this kind of monster that's living on Sauna.
What if a way to show, Dotson's power is that he literally captured the Spinosaurus from Sorna, and it's like his personal guard dinosaur, which very huge, but it's his rank. It's his rancor, and
he rides it to work.
Maybe he's keeping it in this dinosaur habitat along with some of the OG raptors as well.
That would be cool.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what this habitat is, because we know that there's icy scenes that are being filmed, and so my whole thought originally was like Bison is this evil Dr. Evil Lab James Bond type scenario where it's stuck in a mountain in the
well, it's more Mission Impossible now.
Yeah, from
as we're seeing.
judging from the motorcycle scenes, but it's so like how and Collins alluded to, has confirmed that there's going to be more dinosaurs within this than did he say combined?
Animatronics or actual dinosaur species?
Just in total. Well, maybe. Well, I think animatronics. He did say that, but I think also just in total, like we're going to just see a lot of dinosaurs within this. So I think to put Spinosaurus back on the table, you could put any dinosaur back on the table, and it's a good shot that it might make a return in some form, because now you've got, it could possibly be one from InGen side, or something that was completely new or made up from Bison. So there's different possibilities of where these dinosaurs can come from.
Well, that makes me think of, it's this kind of thing if like Claire and Owen are on this property and Alan and Ellie are there too, and it's almost like they're running in the behind the scenes part of a zoo, or it's like they open a door and they shut it like, whew, we're safe, and then they turn around and like they're in the Spinosaurus cage, and then they like run through this like these kind of like fabricated environments, kind of like how the Tyrannosaurus Kingdom was in Jurassic World. Like that could really play for some interesting visual things. Like I love, one of my favorite moments in the Westworld TV show was, for a part of the first season, you don't see how, I guess this is a spoiler if you haven't seen Westworld, but like, you don't see how the people in the control room get to the park. Like, it's just like, you just see Jeffrey Wright in the Westworld, and you're like, wait, how do you go from like the base? And then you actually see the system, the underground system, which working at Disneyland in high school, like that exists at, modern theme parks. And it's like, you could have some fun with that, like visually, of like, okay, we're trying to go through this facility to find Maisie, and it's like we're run into the Dilophosaurus, all the dinosaurs of Jurassic past.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in different style environments. So maybe that, like the official picture that they released, was it New York Times, I think, where they're in like redwoody forests that look very Lost World. Maybe that is inside this dinosaur habitat. Maybe that is part of Biosyn's, what would you call it, like a dome?
Yeah, it's like
this big dome.
That feels very Crichton
It would be
to
interesting
me.
it would see how, that means that Biosyn is like a lot larger and has been a lot
More
basically
prominent in the world. They've
but-
got to have...
but like within the French, like it would explain how they've been in the background this whole entire time, because like in order to have something like that, you need a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
And we know that Dodson's playing this CEO role, so obviously this is a corporation, but like in order to have something like that, like it would be like, oh well, why have it on an island where everyone can get to it and see it, when you could have it in a secret base underground with this like man-made habitat? And that would be really fucking cool to see.
Yeah. And also kind of like Jurassic Park San Diego, kind of like what that was supposed to be. This poor idea of having dinosaurs on the mainland.
Yeah. Well, and I like the intimacy of it. I think
It's got that isolation
Yeah.
feel. We've moved away from the islands. How do you get the isolation feel? We discussed previously what Colin said about, well, for example, you don't go in that forest because there's raptors in that forest and people just stay clear of it. If you went in there, you'd have this isolation feeling, which is something the franchise needs. Having this dinosaur habitat, which is, they're kind of locked in it, that's freaky as hell.
Yeah.
That's a great way of giving, real tension to the situation that they're in, is that they can't actually get out. And also they don't know how at this point, because they're in there, but they don't know what it is, who built it. Like, it's freaky.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's something we need. I think it needs to go down that route more. I want to be a little bit more scared in Dominion.
Me too. And I think, that's what's so, again, thinking to the original Jurassic Park, how truly scary is it? Like, this incident happens when, if you think about it, like if you're Wu or you're Hammond, maybe Hammond is like hanging out in his own chateau by himself, but like if you're down on the ground, Muldoon has drinks with the workers, like out in the field. Like he'll go to the bar just for the workers. He'll hang out with he's kind of like, he's like part of the control room, but then he also is down on the ground. Like, and then all of a sudden this one weekend, everyone's gone. And then you're just trapped on the dinosaurs alone. Like how terrifying, like thinking about that original concept. And if there's this notion of, sure, I want to see dinosaurs spreading across the globe, but at the same time, like I appreciate this thought that maybe we're actually going to get a more intimate adventure.
I like that
for sure. Yeah, which does play into what it was that Jeff Goldblum said about what does he say? We think it might be the last moments of our lives, and we're all bonding with each other in an emotional and somewhat hilarious way. So they're trapped in something, in somewhere, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's one of these, habitats. But so how do you think the end of Fallen Kingdom is going to play into Dominion? And do you actually think, Battle at Big Rock gives us an example? Do you think that's actually a major threat? Or do you think it's something that they're containing and that by this point, 4 years on, there's no dinosaurs in the wild anymore?
Yeah, I recently rewatching Fallen Kingdom, it truly made me realize that the ending is the butterfly effect. It's what Malcolm says. It's like Maisie pushes this button, the dinosaurs get out. There are, auctioneers taking their dinosaurs. There's people taking DNA. Claire and Owen and Maisie are together. It's the idea about all these little decisions, having a cascading effect, having the mosasaur out in the world, having having Rexy out there, having pteranodons flying to Vegas. Like, I don't think we're actually going to see any of these I don't think we're going to pick, because we didn't pick back up where Jurassic World left off, really. Fallen Kingdom picks up, and it's like a lot of what we were thinking of, like immediate after effects, like courtroom scenes, Claire like none of that stuff, like it was irrelevant by the time Fallen Kingdom started, because we have this volcano. And I think it's going to be the same way with Dominion. Like, we're just going to see the long-term effects of DNA being in other people's hands, dinosaurs being in other people's hands, dinosaurs being out in the wild. But I mean, other than maybe, I guess maybe that somebody poached the new Ceratops baby, I almost don't think, I don't think we're going to see a literal continuation of the ending of Fallen Kingdom. I think it's going to be far-reaching.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what Battle at Big Rock was supposed to be for Colin, was this. It's a really cool idea. You've got people camping or in a national park and they have this encounter with dinosaurs. It's one of the many things in this franchise that can now happen, but it isn't the main plot. Because it couldn't, there weren't enough dinosaurs for that to really be impactful. You have to go down this other route of other people breeding, and that's the implication. It's somewhere else, and it's something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was the last few weeks, you know, trying to set up our recording and stuff together. I've been staying in a camper, so I was like feeling the lost world, because there was a thunderstorm at one point during my trip to visit my mom, and like, you know, hearing the thunder and rain on top of the trailer, I was like, oh my God, I'm like in Lost World, but also Battle at Big Rock vibes as well too, because there was, my mom just lives by like a game trail, Mr. Ludlow, like lives by a trail where like deer cross every morning and deer are in the yard, and it just felt very like in, you know, being next to, it just was like, okay, like I'm feeling the vibes and like that stuff, the kind of like fear and uncertainty of like this creature. Like, I think Battle at Big Rock really nailed that, and I don't know how you guys feel about Battle at Big Rock entirely, but I think it's just, I think it truly, like for Colin, is like what I would say almost better directed than Jurassic World. I really loved the style and the tone, and I think he, if that is the direction he's going, like I'm gonna be so stoked for Dominion.
For sure. Yeah, I think that was kind of a big, overwhelming consensus, was that Battle at Big Rock was this strange breakaway from the franchise, like a warmed welcome that felt very JP, but also very new. Because exactly that, like now that we're at the end of Fallen Kingdom, and my criticism is like there's not enough dinosaurs, even with the auction and everything, like in my opinion, with cloning, for it to be like this pandemic, if you will. Like it could be easily controlled, especially after the events of Battle at Big Rock. So I think I said this in the last pod, was like Dominion's got to also answer, like, are we rounding them up again, or are they like literally at the end of this franchise going to be like, okay, well, here it is, like you just said, Steven, butterfly effect, and they're just going to start repopulating. There's nothing we can do about it. Or is this like our last attempt at being able to control this? But you never had control.
That's the illusion.
I think, Battle of Big Rock was a surprise, and I can't believe you got to watch it.
It was.
Theater. I'm jealous.
Well, we got to see it twice because they.
I mean, you can rub it in.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, they like, I guess, you know, they wanted to play it after Jurassic World, but then they just played it at first. And then they so they played Battle at Big Rock, then Jurassic World, and then I think Colin was just like, fuck it, let's roll it again, you know, let's just play it again. And
good, and he should have. He should be so proud of that movie.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous as well. It's like, it's a perfect little dose, and I'm almost gutted that we didn't get this before Fallen Kingdom, and then a new one after Fallen Kingdom as well. You know, it's a shame that we didn't get Colin doing these little short films between the movies as well. I hope we get them.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that would be any possibility of they would play Big Rock before Dominion, but I mean, is it too old already? You know, if they were trying to throw it in front of.
Well, they never actually got their theatrical run, so you know that's something. Yeah, I was really disappointed. What was it? Hobbs and Shaw. Well, I think it was going to be in.
Well, isn't they pushed back the next Fast and Furious movie to April? So what if they play it in front of that and then tee it up for the June Dominion release?
Yeah, that could work. I'd go and I'd buy that ticket just to watch Battle of Big Rock for sure.
And
it's such a good-looking movie, and the dinosaurs in it are incredible as well. The way they look, and that is a perfect example of how to light visual effects, right? Because it's all hidden, it's all dark, and you see it in super high detail, but there's shadows across the face. I don't know. It's just
and
brilliant.
Things touch and things interact in ways, because that's why I liked Fallen Kingdom a lot too, is all the animatronics. But But even with Battle at Big Rock, the way that the baby Nasutoceratops starts to play with the flashlight or whatever, like that's, you have those key contact moments where you're like, oh, that's just a real thing that's happening.
It's real, yeah. And the campfire, it's a campfire, right?
Yeah.
And it's light, like the orange glow that you get, really subtle on the dinosaurs, but you know, just the whole thing was fantastic. And there was an animatronic on set for that, right? Or a puppeted
I
head
think for the Allosaurus, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
well,
was
and
cool.
also, I mean, it was really cool at that event because I actually got to finally meet Colin, which was really was like, oh yeah, like I've been following this, you know, the new half of this franchise for a long time, and I was like, you know, I got to be like, thank you, like this is awesome, and got to meet Emily Carmichael, and I also got to meet Amy Doherty, the composer of Battle at Big Rock, and I genuinely loved the work that she did, kind of creating new score, remixing stuff from Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, Lost World. In the very end,
I think I preferred it to
Yeah.
Michael Giacchino's
yeah,
work.
I mean, I think that there's a case, like, I mean, obviously Giacchino's coming back for Dominion, but it's like, oh, I want her to be involved somehow, because I love, they talked about it at the Q&A about how originally the Battle at Big Rock was supposed to end on a more hopeful note of like, you know, the family is safe, but then you actually watch the short and you're like, it's almost more of this implication of like, oh no, like this is the beginning of the new normal.
Exactly.
Like, and so to Amy's score of like the dun, like almost like monster movie style, where it's like like this is just the beginning. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're here.
Yeah. Ooh.
They're here.
Yeah, for sure. Which is, again, I think it's something that's why I'd love more of these short films, depending on what happens in Dominion, of course. But those interactions in the forests, in national parks, maybe in the desert with a dinosaur that shouldn't be there, is so
Well,
cool.
that's my question, because we've had I mean, it seems like there's, and maybe it's just the way that we've been following it, but there's a decent amount of second unit. And do you think that they could have squeezed in some short stuff while they're doing Dominion, or is that too much for one production, especially right now under COVID?
Oh, you mean like another... yeah. Well, it depends what the viral marketing's going to do, right? Because they could be utilizing a lot of this movie, like the stuff we knew that they shot in Canada, like the stuff they shot in
Yeah.
Egypt. Maybe that's kind of viral marketing, or going down that route more. Maybe there's going to be a big build-up for Dominion where we see more of these interactions, we see news reports, we see this has appeared here, there's these horror stories from Costa Rica.
Ugh, that would be,
You know, that's something, yeah, that's something we never got either from the novels.
I think
Is-
what's interesting. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I just to jump on that, I think how we could also see that quickly without it being too much is like Battle at Big Rock showed that you can introduce these characters that you absolutely have no idea who they are, set up the scenario and tone within 3 minutes, and have it all played out within 12. So like these different locations, I think like with the intimacy thing too, and the second unit, I think we could see like more of those type scenes within Dominion, or at least that's what I would hope for.
yeah, maybe a better version of, I don't even want to mention them, but of the motion comics, but like a better, an actual more thoughtfully produced something like that. Like it could even be like 3 minutes of like, you know, they could go full cheesy and just sort of make it news footage. But I think seeing Battle at Big Rock, I think they could do something more clever with that concept.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, our main characters don't have to be the only people that are involved in these dinosaur attacks. And, you know, we only kind of see that sometimes, like within the opening of Fallen Kingdom, like, you know, there's this alternate scenario with the dinosaurs or different people. But yeah, I would almost welcome the idea of just cutting to Arizona at, you know, 11 p.m. at the railroad station, you know, railroad cross light, you know, and there's this trucker, let's say, you know, and like
Very close encounters.
yeah, exactly.
Going down that fight,
and
yeah.
like something weird happens, and like, or like he thinks the train's coming, but really it's like the weight of a dinosaur is coming down the tracks that he doesn't, you know, that you don't see, and yeah, it turns into this like JP scenario. But it's
That is a great idea, though. Yeah, have him sat in the truck. He's just finished his shift. It's 4 a.m. He's waiting for this train. It's not a train.
That's our
It would have
herd
this-
of Triceratops.
It's yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like this Wild West, like like this, just like, and like, dude, but like a whole herd of them like topples over this semi truck, you know, and like he comes out like barely alive, but like the whole truck is just banged up, mutilated, and he was just like, "What the fuck was that?" You know, and like,
You know, Battle at Big Rock 2, or I don't know, whatever they want to call these things.
Yeah, but like it's gonna. But then circling back to this leak synopsis, it's like, okay, then what's if the whole main point of the movie is Maisie and her kidnapping? Well, she's obviously got something that they want. So what is that?
DNA.
It's some dino DNA. And
yeah. So do you think that, Ryan? Do you think she's gonna have something like that in her?
Okay, I just want to make it clear that I had this theory well before these leaks.
Before Aziz.
Yeah,
let the record state.
Before Aziz was even born, to be honest. But hearing the leaks kind of just adds another connection dot string to my pinboard on my wall of Jurassic World Dominion theories, because Maisie's got something in, like, maybe it's the fact that she's a clone, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they want to reverse engineer, which is brutal in itself. But like, I know what you mean. Like, it could just be that because she's a human clone, they figure that out, and it's like, how the hell did they do that? We need to know if is there something else about it, or
is she impervious to disease because of what they've used in her? Like, like maybe Biosyn's been playing off as this pharmaceutical company this whole entire time, but obviously this with a sinister agenda, and
the sinister agenda being, right, so if they're a pharmaceutical company or something like that, maybe that their goal is to save the world, right? Rid the world of disease, or cure this or cure that.
Right.
But the real agenda is control or population or something.
Or having the vaccine to something like creating this dinosaur virus or something. It could play out crazy, because I'm like, why is Ellie coming? She's a paleobotanist.
Yeah.
Why is Grant coming back other than being a dinosaur expert? Why does Malcolm need to come back? He's a chaos theorist. So like, like, why do these characters, like, they have to have good reason other than just fan service? And I think it could get heavy, but like, the big question is that has this been in Colin's mind, like he's kind of said sometimes, the whole entire time, like since Jurassic World has been written? Because he's kind of, remember, like, we know the story, they were in the hotel room and they basically they planned out like the whole trilogy, but we're like, we're gonna do this with the first one. But so it's like, did you have everybody in mind for that third act, or is this like,
has it changed and developed over time?
Well, I mean, right. I remember at the 25th anniversary of Jurassic Park at Universal Studios, I remember, because Emily, I mean, that was can't wait. Hopefully someday we can all get back together like that. But
next year, Jurassic Park 3.
Oh yeah, 20th anniversary. Yeah,
Universal.
Right.
That's right.
Universal.
I keep wanting to. I genuinely do want to host a screening or something, or do something with it, because it's like there's prints laying around the office. Like, at Universal, they're not doing anything with them. Like, let us just borrow it for a night. We'll get Alessandra Nivola to come out.
Dude, William H. Macy come down in character, of course. I don't want to speak to William H. Macy. I don't want to meet him. I want to meet Paul.
Well, yeah, and we'll just like hand him a mug, like right before. But I remember, and that was May of 2018, and Emily Carmichael did an Instagram story with Laura Dern, or no, I think it was a story before or after that, where she was saying something like, we're just starting, we're in the middle of like starting to write Dominion. So it's like, how much has it changed? How much of like, when Colin, brought in Emily, he's like, well, here's my rough idea, or,
Yeah, because Derek Connolly was writing it originally, right? And he's not really involved anymore with this. So, how much did she bring?
Well, and also now with like the franchise machine, like you hear so many stories about like alternate Marvel timelines where like I heard like at some point they even shot a post-credit scene with like in Iron Man 3 of like Tony Stark meeting Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like, or that Captain Marvel was supposed to be at the end of Avengers Age of Ultron. So it's like, but is Universal and is Jurassic the type of franchise where they had these kind of like back, if they couldn't use Spider-Man, we're going to do it this way. Like, I almost don't think Universal is as flexible of a machine as that. So I almost feel like maybe I almost wonder, did they like have a version of Dominion without the original trio and one with them, or something like that?
Sure. I feel like 2018 we all kind of had that feeling that everybody was going to be back in some way or form. Like there was a feeling in the air,
especially when they had Laura Dern at JP25 and Jeff Goldblum. And
oh man,
it kind of like Laura Dern was sat there. She was next to Frank Marshall, producer. She was next to Colin Trevorrow. It's kind of like I don't know. It kind of hinted like something's gonna happen.
Well, and there was like you can also tell that like, and even with Jeff being as like laissez-faire about everything, you can tell that like they're genuinely excited about like the story and the character, and like that's what we felt like. Either they were just doing an incredible job at acting at this event but like there was just this feeling, and yeah, like you said, there was like these allusions to it all kind of happening, and I feel like that's a fair question like we could ask Colin, but if he was able to confirm that like, yeah, we've had them in mind this entire time, I feel like for him that would be such a big like 2 middle finger fuck you to Star Wars.
Yeah.
like and the mess of the story writing that's happened with that trilogy. So it's like it would be kind of cool to know that but it doesn't matter to me either. Like as long as the story's good, you know, as long as it's...
we know that Barry was supposed to be like a lead role with Owen in Fallen Kingdom, and that didn't happen. You remember Colin talking about that after Jurassic World,
right?
Their relationship is so vital. And he wasn't even in Fallen Kingdom. They are bringing it back now, but it shows that things do shift around, and maybe they had the idea to have the original 3 back in Fallen Kingdom. You don't know.
Yeah.
It's a point you made very early on, Stephen, was how Fallen Kingdom almost could be Jurassic Park 4.
Yeah.
You almost could get rid of Jurassic World and just take off from that, and the stuff that we visit is just more of the original park as opposed to the abandoned Jurassic World, and that is something I think it's dead on. Like Fallen Kingdom feels like the beginning of a trilogy, in a way. Yeah. And I for me, we didn't need a new park.
Yeah, I mean, it's that sort of, I mean, you know, again, it's the trappings of this particular franchise where it's like, but we want, you know, that's like our childhood dream is to see an open park. You know, that's something I wanted since I was a kid. But, you know, sometimes you have to think about story needs first over sort of what, you know, it's just like, but we just want it, you know, and we want these type of dinosaurs, and we want, you know, there's things that we want, but maybe aren't necessarily best for storytelling, but, you know.
And I do understand why they did it. It was interesting when Force Awakens came out and then Jurassic World came out. It was interesting to see the different ways they handled being a kind of like a soft reboot, right? You could call them soft reboots. I think Jurassic World, when we first heard the leak, I think it was Joe Blow that leaked that it was a park, a new park. I couldn't get it. I didn't understand why. I understand why now from a business sense, from like the franchise sense, why it had to happen and maybe why it had to go down that route. But yeah, I think you're right. Fallen Kingdom definitely feels like it could have been the movie that happened after Jurassic World.
Well, yeah, in a way, the most important elements of Jurassic World are Claire and Owen, Blue, and then the Indominus Rex, essentially. It's to sort of include those elements. But yeah, there's a version of that where like Claire and Owen are just two people that want to help this cause, you know, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, yeah.
That's interesting.
I
wish that's kind of what I could do with my brain, is just forget about Jurassic World and have Fallen Kingdom start, because maybe I'd have a different perspective on it. But there are, I mean, it's Jurassic Park, so they're like, no matter how shitty I might think either one of the movies is, like there are still elements from each one that I can pull that I'm like, yeah, like I love that.
Well, I was also going to say just almost about like the direction of the franchise as a whole, and Tim from Collect Jurassic was talking about this a little bit, and I forget if it was just sometimes I forget if when I talk about Jurassic Park with somebody if it's on a podcast or not, but this idea of almost Jurassic as a branding, being more comfortable with nostalgia, where it's like at the beginning is almost like we got to sell world, and then like, I mean, to the fact that the Dominion, at least temporary logos, are in the original Jurassic colors. Like, how far have we come, you know?
Right. Yeah, right. And Camp Cretaceous as well, you know, that's going down the classic route. That's the classic colors. And that's supposed to be something that happened at the same time as Jurassic World. So you're right, it's interesting. And I think it's better as well. I have to admit, the red and yellows and deeper colors work better for me than like the metallic grays and blues.
I mean, it's very cold, you know?
Yeah, which is funny as well. If Dominion changes the art style and it does go down this classic route, it's funny that the new parks, Universal just changed the Jurassic World
Yeah.
ride, made it all silver, and then the new movie comes out and it's not like that
Yeah.
at all. That would be quite
Well,
funny.
and I mean, in a way, I think they've almost set us up for it, because it's like Jurassic World logo, pristine, steel, stone, whatever, and then we go to Fallen Kingdom where it's cracked and falling apart and the lava's coming through. So it feels like it's almost like the Jurassic World is crumbling, and then and what's left is like the Dominion logo or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of thinking of when you were describing that. And even Jake, that is kind of something that I love about Jake Johnson's character so much about Jurassic World, is like he is kind of he's the fan, he's the audience member too, being like, not necessarily saying this entire world that we're bringing you in isn't nearly as good as the OG, but like he kind of, he says that in one of his lines, like everything about that part was so legit. And I've been thinking of that as this franchise as like kind of like this like debuilding of what we've always wanted to, or at least what this vision of the new franchise is, of it kind of just crumbling back to, and even the title Dominion has like this such sinister aspect to it. So it's like, this is, no matter like what you do with Jurassic, like this is what it's always going to be. In the end, is kind of like this takeaway from it. But the classic Jurassic is, to me, what speaks like the true
timelessness.
Yeah, but what, I don't know really what the fuck I'm saying, but to me it is like what Jurassic is in our world now. Like it's just a sinister fucking thing to deal with.
No, totally. Well, I almost think that, because there's been questions whether or not Lowry, Jake Johnson's character, is going to come back, but what if you just have him, you can only get him back for one scene, so you just shoot him in a room, like on a computer, looking nervous, and then you see it's an eBay purchase, and it's like he sold the Barbasol can, and you see like who he's sending it to, and it says Dotson on Lewis Dotson on the side of the. Oh, geez. You're like, that's how you get it all together.
Jake Johnson, we loved you, we trusted you.
And he sold the Barbasol can to Dotson.
The flashback scene is him actually just like strolling one day during the events, or just like a normal day of Jurassic World, and he's like, oh, what's this thing sticking out of the ground, as he's eating a sandwich. And but immediately is able to determine that it's a can from '93 that's holding dinosaur embryos that are still viable.
I mean, maybe there's people at the park who took their breaks and would wander around in the Forbidden Zone or whatever.
Oh yeah, right. Oh god, I always want to go back to like what the Forbidden Zone was supposed to be, because there was all these rumors earlier too of like a pack of raptors that they couldn't.
Oh yeah.
That they couldn't round up, or that they just couldn't tame. So that's why they had to like build this wall essentially to keep them away.
I just remember again in the sort of pantheon of like rumors that, like, in my head, when Colin showed the East Dock sign in one of those like original behind the scenes photos, like in my head there, or maybe I just heard a rumor at some point of like Zach and Gray stumbling upon Nedry's Jeep, like just seeing his corpse, skeleton, still in the chair,
That would be cool, like a little nest.
Yeah, truly a nest coming out of his belly.
But it's crazy too how they kind of didn't explain how. I mean, and here's something that I will defend, because when I visited Hawaii, I was blown away by this. Like, the foliage and the landscape can change dramatically with just in a few years, and that sort of.
It's so fast.
One of the guys was telling me an old airstrip on one of the Hawaiian islands is completely overtaken. Like you wouldn't even know. 60 years ago, there was this runway with bunkers and buildings, and it's just completely overgrown, man. He was saying something about 6 feet per year. Some of the branches can grow. So you imagine now, 25 years later, that can look completely different. So it's
the OG visitor center on Nublar. What would that really look like? Well, the foliage around it, that lake, it would just be green, you almost wouldn't be able to make out the building itself, right? Surely. It would have been taken over completely.
In a weird way, this leak with the whatever these creatures are, for some reason it almost makes me feel like I kind of am starting to see what this movie is about more so, because up until this point it's like we have a cast list, we have some locations, but Jurassic Park is jungle. Jurassic Park has always been jungle, and so this going into this movie and thinking like conceptualizing what this movie is about, I think has been harder for me than any Jurassic sequel, because it's like Pinewood, some Malta streets, that small town in whatever the name of not Vancouver Island, or maybe Merritt, that was the name of the town.
Right. In Canada.
Yeah, and I don't know how it's been like for you guys as far as conceptualizing this movie, but for me it's like there's an exciting element to that because I can't quite picture what this movie is going to be.
Yeah,
I get that. Yeah, the Malta stuff is definitely throwing me. We've never seen that kind of environment before. I'm very excited to see it. How's it going to be utilized? How's that going to happen? And I think as well, seeing the New York Times photo, I was happy that we were going to get some sauna-looking jungle back. That really excited me because, as you said, Jurassic is jungle.
Yeah.
It's the islands, it's the jungle. And we can't really go back to the islands now. We can't have another movie that's set on the island, at least in this current trilogy. But seeing those environments again, whatever this dinosaur habitat's bringing, we're going to see snow. That's going to be fascinating. I think people have always wanted to see, or there's always that anticipation: dinosaurs in snow. What could that really mean? I'm pumped for that. But
there's a diversity that I think Colin is pushing, and at least what I'm sensing from this, that I'd love for him to kind of talk. Well, I'm sure he will. But it's almost like we're seeing like this diversity, not only with like the landscape, but like taking out of the jungle kind of is a weird factoid for me. That was something that kind of rubbed me just a little weird in Fallen Kingdom. But I could see, and what I'm hoping for is like kind of the science play to this is like, and we've just learned like there's like a farmer added to the cast list of Dominion, and which like goes back to Colin talking about like the agricultural aspect of things. Like I would almost like to see, like with Malta, these dinosaurs have been almost now made specifically for these environments to cater to whatever they're being used for. So say Biosyn's making some Deinonychus or a different version of a raptor, but like what they can specifically do and like the color schemes that we talked about are something that like alludes to like the Malta environment or the snowy environment or... So it'll be interesting to see how like they're being used now, because Colin's wanted to always talk about like what can we expand beyond.
True. The Apple versus Microsoft thing.
Right.
The whole, how would they use it for their different purposes? Yeah. Fascinating. Well, before the run up to Dominion, Stephen, we'll have to have you on again. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to speak to you.
It's been such a blast. I mean, it's that thing of I love listening to this podcast, and it's like I'm like, I just want to chime in, but it's like, oh no, and now I get to chime in. But that's what's so great about podcasts. You just feel like you're getting to, and again, it's just like this is such a fun time for us, and it's like weird because there was a brief period with the COVID and shutting down. It's like, were we going to have this kind of pre-honeymoon thing for a whole extra year? I mean, what if there's a point where it's like, maybe this movie was going to come out June 2022, and it's just like, wow, what would we have done with our time? As fans, like truly then.
Well, celebrated Jurassic Park 3, of course, but
I know truly, it's like, oh damn it, like now, I mean, Dominion and JP3 have to share anniversaries, but it's fine. There's enough room for both.
We'll make it work. Yeah. We'll make it work. But thank you for joining us, buddy. And obviously, people know you. My favorite murder. I still see people out, like I see people's phones and it's like that's the top podcast they're listening to. But you also see Jurassic Right. You started that how long ago now?
That was 2017. It was kind of like wanting to lead up to Fallen Kingdom because I mean I wanted to do another podcast but I wanted to try something a little different, and so I was like, well, I know Jurassic Park really well, so I can try a podcast that isn't that isn't like the other things I do or whatever. But
and you have such a personal take on, like, that's what I love about See Jurassic Right, is it's such this like interpersonal connection that you have with it specifically, but that everyone can connect
Thank
with.
you. I mean, it's just that thing of like wanting to do stuff that I'm just very much of like wanting to do, like, everyone has a niche, and it's sort of wanting to, stepping into a community and knowing everybody else out there. And it's like, I just want to do something that I'm proud of, but I also want to do something that's like where we can all hang out and talk about the thing we love, because that's why we're all here,
Totally.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, right? That's the most important thing. We all love this thing. It's why we're together. We can disagree on the T-Rex looking different or whatever it is, but none of it matters at the end. Like, we're here because we love these movies.
Totally.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Stephen. And Ryan, it's been great to speak to you too.
Always.
As always, check out JurassicOutpost.com/store for Kirby merch, most important thing. We have a new partnership with Frome, 10% discount on their website. All those links are in the description, and links to Stephen Ray Morris' podcast is in there too. Thank you very much for listening.
Bye.